really feel like Selah is a treasure and a gem for the church. That we're empowering and equipping men and women of God to return to their communities and to be able to give this gift of sacred listening and contemplative presence to others.
Spiritual direction, as a model, you can find it way back in the early church. You can find it all through the scriptures, actually. When, in the story in Samuel, when young Samuel comes to Eli, he hears the voice in the night, Samuel, and he goes to Eli and says, "You called?" And Eli says, "No." And finally, the third time, Eli says, "That's the Lord." So say, "Speak, Lord, your servant's listening." That's a spiritual direction conversation. So in spiritual direction, people bring to conversation, this is what's going on in my life, and a director helps them listen and notice, oh, the Lord's speaking. Let's listen together. Speak, Lord, we're listening. Very simply, it's two people meeting together. You can do it in a small group setting as well. For the sake of the one person whom we call the directee, becoming more attentive to, more aware of God's presence, God's ways, God's love in their lives. The director is there to create the space for that to happen, to protect that space, and to nurture all that's happening in that listening.
So in the 2-year program, there's 5 retreats or residencies that someone will experience. And so they enter in and they're a part of a cohort of usually about 12 to 13 people. And so they have an orientation residency, and then there's 4 other residencies where they join another cohort. So usually there's about 24, 25 people sharing in this experience together. And so the cohorts are a mixture of training in spiritual formation kind of topics and some specifics when it comes to how to be a spiritual director. And then there's a lot of time in peer groups where they're actually practicing spiritual direction with their peers.
Really everything we do in Selah has that foundational listening, growing in how we pay attention. We call it discernment. Discernment at its heart is just noticing the presence of God. Is this God? And growing our spiritual sensitivity to his presence and his ways and his voice.
To be trained as a spiritual director is really part of any kind of pastoral work. And it's something that can enhance any ministry. To be trained as a spiritual director can make a better pastor. To be trained as a spiritual director can make a better administrator in a church. It can make a better teacher. It can make a better chaplain. Because what you're learning is how to companion souls in the mystery of what God is doing in their lives. And that's something that can enhance. In fact, it really should be a part of every pastor's training, I think, that they can learn how to tend to souls in a deep and prayerful way.
With Selah, when we're at a retreat center, what goes on is it's a set-apart place and it's a set-apart time, which is what spiritual direction is. Even just in an hour-long direction session, you come apart. You close the door, you turn off the phone. You're there to pay attention to God with you. So by coming to a retreat center, it's that same kind of context. And we're learning how to be attentive in that set-apart context so that we can live into that. So what happens is people come to Selah because they want to be trained to be spiritual directors. They end up just growing, that happens, but they grow deeply and amazingly in their own life with the Lord. Beautiful ways, growing in their self-understanding and understanding of God and how God is constantly working in them in love, just to keep deepening them.